Hello, folks. I am Andrew Carter with the News and Observer, joined by my colleague Laura Keeley here at Cameron Indoor Stadium, where tomorrow night we got Duke in North Carolina once again. And as always, there are some implications with this game. Sometimes it's for the regular season championship. Sometimes it's a 1-versus-2 type game, but a little bit different. Tomorrow night possibly could decide who stays in Raleigh for the NCAA Tournament. What are your thoughts just on where Duke stands in its quest to stay close to home?
Yeah, Andrew, kind of looking at, trying to organize my life and my travel schedule for a long little bit, I kind of penciled in staying here in Raleigh. The top 4 seeds get geographic preference for the opening weekend of the NCAA Tournament. It looked for sure like Duke was going to be a top 4 seed. And then, they do what they do against Wake Forest, and that kind of throws everything into question. This team is capable of looking quite bad at times, like when they're giving up 17-0 runs to, non-tournament teams. So, I think it's very much up in the air for Duke. I think they really need to win this game. Otherwise, they risk getting shipped out to Spokane or who knows where.
When Duke and UNC met 2.5 weeks ago in Chapel Hill, both teams were playing really well. UNC, of course, was in the midst of a long winning streak. They still haven't lost. Duke was playing probably better than it is now. Both teams have kind of hit a bit of a lull. UNC grinded out 2 ugly victories against Virginia Tech and Notre Dame. And, of course, you referenced what happened to Duke at Wake Forest. What do you think needs to happen for the Blue Devils to get back on track here tomorrow night?
They need to start hitting shots. This is, in kind of traditional Duke fashion, it's a team that has to shoot well from 3 to have a chance to win. They were shooting about 42% through the first 25 games of the year. The number's under 30 for the last 4. If they're not going to hit shots, they're not going to win very many games. They're certainly not going to beat very good teams. So they need shots to start falling. And somehow, some way, this team needs to find a way that when the going gets tough, they get tougher instead of wilting and giving up, leads, massive runs, stuff like that. So someone somehow needs to kind of toughen this group up. It's going to have to be some player so they can, hold on to some wins. What about UNC?
Yeah, these guys have been playing some really ugly basketball of late. I think really the key for UNC is getting Marcus Page back involved. He had a career-high 35 points in the overtime victory at NC State. Looked like the ACC Player of the Year in that game. And then for him, just 16 points combined the past couple games. He hasn't shot it very well. He hasn't been all that assertive offensively. And he's a guy that UNC really needs to be more selfish. He's a very unselfish guy by nature, but you hear that Roy Williams has said repeatedly that he would like Marcus to take more shots, put the team on his back. I don't think UNC has much of a shot if they come in here tomorrow night and Marcus has another 7-point game, a 9-point game. I think he's going to be really key for these guys. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Laura, is Coach K. Obviously, he had a health scare the other night at Wake Forest. Roy Williams said today that he reached out to Coach K, contacted him, they exchanged some words. What is his status? Obviously, he's fine and good to go, but what's his status in terms of being the usual intense guy that we're used to seeing?
At this point, it's been a really emotional year for him. His emotional tank is obviously spent, totally below empty. So I think you kind of saw that on Wednesday night when he started to kind of get fiery as his team started playing worse and worse. I think he'll be fine. He's a professional. I'd expect him to look totally fine, but there's no doubt that when this season ends, he's going to take some much-needed time to decompress and kind of just process everything that's happened this year.
All right, so the keys for Duke, I'll get to the keys for UNC in a second, but the keys for Duke, obviously one of them is make 3-pointers or 5 of 22. The first time these teams met from 3, what are 2 others for Duke?
It would be nice if Jabari Parker could, like you referenced with Marcus Page, kind of put the team on his back and take over. He's by far their best player. Against Wake Forest, he only scored, like a putback dunk in the final 5 minutes, and that was after the game was already, out of hand. So, they really need to get him the ball in crunch time when they really need points. So I'd say that's point number 2. And point number 3, kind of what we talked about, they need to be tough. They need to be emotionally tough. And if Mike Krzyzewski's not prepared to give them everything they need to be able to come up with it by themselves somehow.
Indeed. And for UNC, I think it's perimeter defense. They've excelled at that all year long. They lead the ACC. I think they do. They might have actually dropped down in that set. I think actually maybe they're 3rd now in the ACC. But up there
they're
nationally in 3-point defense, I think they have to match the intensity. Obviously, when Duke came to the Smith Center, it was a very intense, frenetic atmosphere. for Duke entering that, and they struggle with that. I think UNC is going to enter the same kind of thing. They have to handle that well here. And then the last one, like I said, Page. I think he's going to be the guy that really has to lead these guys tomorrow night. But I guess we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see tomorrow night. Last Duke UNC game, the season finale for Laura Keeley. This has been Andrew Carter with the News and Observer. Thanks for watching.